Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here at the digital book launch for the ARO relationship guide. I'm delighted that you are here, and you are here with me and Sarah Whalen and Alicia Rogers, and we're going to have an incredible conversation. I am incredibly looking forward to it. So, Sarah and Alicia, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to have you here.
Happy to be here, y'all.
Super excited for this.
So before we dive into the conversation, I just want to for people who are new to Crowdcast, I want to give you a little introduction to the space. As you can see on the side there is a chat function. Feel free to use the chat feature throughout the conversation. You don't have to kind of wait for us to ask you questions. If you just want to chat with each other, respond to things, shout out where you are, use the chat feature as much as you'd like. We will continue our conversations, but you can use that as a place to respond. If you have a question that you would like to have answered at the end of an official question during the Q&A portion, you'll see a little box with a question mark over on the side. That would be the place where you would put your questions for us to answer at the end. If they're in there, then I can click a little button and it will earmark where the answer is. So it's good for repeat viewing. Also, there are a couple of poll questions that are there on the side. You see the little bar graph. If you click that, you can see some polls, a couple questions to ask while you're watching or when you're coming in. Just kind of want to know who's in the house. A lot of Ace and ARO Ace folks. That's awesome. And since it's Ace week, I wanted to know garlic bread or cake. I see we're leaning garlic bread, and I just feel like we're wrong. I don't know. That's me. No hate to garlic bread. We love garlic bread. That is also delicious. So yeah, I don't want to do that. Okay, great. So I wanted to give us an opportunity to introduce ourselves sort of briefly so we can know who everyone is. I will start and then I'll hand it off to my incredible colleagues here. I'm Cody Daigle-Oriens, otherwise known as Ace Dad Advice on the internet. I write stuff and I make videos sometimes, and I create content to help people learn more about asexuality and relationships. And we are here because I wrote this backwards book, the Ace and ARO Relationship Guide, which came out yesterday. And so that's me. That's what I do. And so I'll let my incredible conversation pals introduce themselves. Sarah, do you want to go next?
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Whalen. I'm the author of This Doesn't Mean Anything. Mine's actually backwards. Yours was forwards for me, Cody.
Oh, okay.
And when I'm not writing books about grumpy ace girls finding love, I'm an educator.
Awesome.
Alicia, you want to take it?
Yes. Hey, y'all. I'm Alicia. I am a ARO Ace content creator and a graphic designer full time. I'm mainly just someone who enjoys watching shows and movies and would love to analyze representation in that.
Yeah, and I am delighted to have both of you here. As I told them before we dove in, when I started to think about having a digital book event for the launch of the new book, but the first question was, who do you want to spend time talking to about this? And Sarah and Alicia were the first people that came to my mind as Ace and ARO content creators who are thinking about relationships, creating things about relationships, talking about relationships. Their work inspires me and excites me. And so I was like, yeah, it's them. They're the ones I want to talk to. So I'm delighted that they are here. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to share a couple slides so that if you don't already follow these fine people, you can take take a screen capture or take a photo of these slides so that you can find them. And I'm going to share another one of our partners for tonight. So, okay. Yeah. So, so take a screenshot of this. This is where you can support and follow the awesome partners for tonight, both Alicia and Sarah. You can find them at those places. And I included the links are so that you can not just follow them, but also financially contribute to the work that they do. So take a screenshot and make sure you do that. Financially support these two incredible creators because their labor matters, and we should be supporting the labor that they provide for us, the educational and entertainment. Go make sure that happens. Little Gay Bookstore is another partner for tonight. They are an online bookseller in Ohio, queer owned, from my hometown in Ohio, Columbus, and they are going to have book plated copies of the book of the Ace and ARO Relationship Guide available for purchase. So at the end of the evening, I will put a link in the chat where you can head over to Little Gay Bookstore and order a copy of the book, and you'll have a book plate by me in that. If you order from them after this event is over. So screenshot of that to help them out. And, because I couldn't resist me, you can, a great way to continue supporting my work is a huge help for me is following me on Patreon. For a couple bucks a month, you get some extra content. I create original video content, discounts to the digital workshops I do, preview of stuff I write for Substack, and it just helps me keep doing this. I am a student again, so Patreon really helps me continue to make Ace Dad Advice while I am a struggling college student, a very old struggling college student. So, help an old person out. All right, so that's that. And everything that I shared there will get sent to all of our registered attendees. So you'll get all their links in an email at the end of the program tonight. So the Ace and ARO Relationship Guide is a book that the reason the Ace and ARO Relationship Guide exists is because I approached my publisher and said, I feel like a lot of the questions that I get from people on Ace Dad Advice circle around relationships. How do we have good relationships? How do we build them? How do we navigate them as Ace and ARO people? And I wanted to create a nonfiction resource that would help us, that would help people create more Ace and ARO affirming relationships in their lives, not just like romantic ones or partnered ones, but like any relationship, our platonic ones, our friendship ones, our family relationships. It would be like a guide to just be a better relationship partner and demand better relationship partners from everyone. And so the first question that I want to throw out to everybody is, what do you think people get wrong about Ace and ARO relationships? Because I certainly encounter a lot of misconceptions from people through the content and the work that I do. From your perspective, your lived experience and your work, what do people get wrong about Ace and ARO relationships? Sarah, do you want to start?
Yeah, so for me, it was a lot of because I've had, people in my life and then also total strangers who think they can comment on my relationship, assume that my partner, who is an allosexual man, is either with me for a not loving reason. There's got to be some reason he's with me, and I promise you, in education, that's not. I don't have anything special there, or that he must be, somehow stepping out on me on something like that. And that's just not the case. We shouldn't comment on anyone's relationship like that anyway. But that was definitely one of those things that I had to constantly shut down a lot, was that the assumption that either he was stepping out on me or that I had something else going on aside from him loving me. And that's been interesting. It's certainly not something that I try to take to heart, but it's something that I feel only ever gets encountered specifically in Ace relationships, where there's that automatic assumption that it's not out of just love for your partner. There's got to be something else there, and I feel like other relationships wouldn't get questioned nearly as much about that kind of thing.
Alicia?
Yes, hard agree on that. And it's when we communicate that, it seems like people kind of hit a mental wall when we explain that. And then as for me, I just came out as aromantic and on top of my asexuality just 2 years ago. And I actually had stopped dating by that point because I realized that communication was kind of hard for certain people to understand. And especially inside the allosexual world and the alloromantic world, people seem to think that if you don't love them romantically, you can't express your love at all, which is just, of course, not true. So yeah, the misconceptions about how we represent our love is something that we still have to navigate.
Yeah, something that I encounter a lot because I am in a polyamorous relationship. So there are and of different kinds too. So there are four members of my family. Two of them are my romantic partners. Another is a queer platonic partner. And when I tell people that I'm ace, and then I tell them I am married, and then I tell them I'm polyamorous and have other partners, I feel like their heads explode. Like there is always this assumption that because I'm asexual, that I am incredibly limited to the kinds of relationships that they can imagine me to have. Like, how dare I get married, or how dare I have multiple partners as an asexual person? And I think one of my favorite things about kind of like engaging with ace and ARO folks who are in all kinds of relationships is seeing ace and ARO people push back against that and show like, yeah, there's lots of ways that we can imagine our lives, and there's lots of ways that we can imagine relationships for ourselves, and our imagination for ourselves is a lot bigger than your misconceptions. And that yeah, I love watching people kind of like they become that like confused math girl whenever they're like, when they say like I'm poly and I have three partners, they're like they become the math girl.
Yeah, misconceptions, especially. Yeah. I think a lot of like people assume an ace person has to be with another ace person, because I did as well. Because to me, it was like I felt like it was the easiest thing. I would like not have to give a vocabulary lesson to my partner. They would understand immediately what I meant. But like, oh, I am sex repulsed, and they would understand that. But like my joke to people is that I was ghosted by the one person I went on a date with who was ace, and my ALO partner has been with me for like 6 years. So that's my joke to people. But it's also like, your book talks a lot about having hope for yourself and for your relationship. And I think that's really important is if we normalize, you don't actually have to be another ace person. And if we tell other ace people, hey, maybe give those, non-ace people in your life a chance to love you, give them that chance and don't push them away. And I say that knowing the privilege that I hold as someone who had the most likely, the most ideal outcome. I recognize that because I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of messages from readers who are struggling and stuff like that. And I understand that my situation is probably not the most common, and I hate that. But I also think there's room for growth. And I think that ALO people need to understand that you're not, you can still play on the team here. Like, I'm not benching you. But you do kind of have to put in the work and unlearning a lot of things. But that is another misconception that I myself believed for several years, was that I was gonna have to find another ace person, because it is, it can be a lot of work. It's educating an ALO person. But this is where change starts to happen, is if we tell people and let people know, hey, you can be in an ace ALO relationship and have it work. Like, I don't ever want anyone to assume, because back in the day, before there was platforms like y'all's, it was a lot harder to sort of find that community and get that feedback from people to tell you. Sometimes we need people to tell us you can have that. It's not a fantasy.
Yeah, and then like people seem to assume, like, the thing about like relationships is that like every person is different. Like, you're going to find your person, and honestly, none of us know whether that person is going to be ace or ARO or not. So it's like every relationship is very unique, just like every person. So it's kind of interesting that people assume that we have to find like another aromantic or asexual person to be happy. So it's like, it's such an interesting thing we have to do.
Yeah, and I think I always say like the risk that, like, sure, we have to risk rejection, but everybody risks rejection when it comes to relationships. We do have to risk rejection, but asking for what you want, and sort of asking and demanding and trying to like manifest a world that is more inclusive for you, like that's the work we have to do, even if sometimes or many times we're going to get rejected. We never get the world that we want if we don't ask for it and try for it. So like I always feel like that's, yeah, we it may suck sometimes, but you still have to like push toward it and ask for it. That's how you get there eventually. It won't just sort of like fall out of the sky.
Yeah, and another thing about that is like I feel like on the partner's end, like if there's an ALO person in the room, I feel like they always assume the ace person is like, the misconception is that the ace person is rejecting them when they sort of bring up the boundaries and the consent conversation. And for me, it was like, no, I'm actually trying to invite you more into my life by telling you this very vulnerable thing about me. Like, sure, I was open about it, like when I was dating, but like when I was actually getting down to the nitty gritty with my current partner, it was like, no, I want to allow you into my space. I want to show you that I am comfortable with you. And I think that's sort of like, if you're taking it as a rejection, you're sort of centering yourself, when this is something that is very hard as an ace person to sort of get into. And I think that if you sort of if you feel like that is a rejection, instead of someone trying to be open with you and trying to work out a way to be with you more with their boundaries and their consent, that's something personal you need to look into. But again, going into, I don't think like a consent or boundaries conversation should be exclusive to people with ace partners. Like whenever like I talk to people, I'm kind of concerned. Like only ace people seem, they think only ace people have those conversations, when I feel like that should be a conversation for everybody. And you also go into this in the ace and ARO relationship guide by sort of, you know, normalizing things like, can I sit next to you and stuff like that. Like, it concerns me very highly that only ace people are having the super intense boundaries conversation. And when I talk to people and I give them advice, I always tell them to kind of be really specific. Like, if you need to, yeah, you can say this is okay during this time and only doing this time, X Y. Be specific about the action, because you might be okay with this one thing, but this other thing that like might be the next step from that one thing is not okay. And like, you, again, I feel like I'm concerned that like allo people don't seem to be having those conversations.
Oh my gosh, yes, I agree completely. And I've been realizing that like recently, because some of my coworkers are kind of dealing with that relationship. I'm like, you need to communicate these boundaries. And when I found out that they don't like actually have these conversations because intimacy and consent is not just in the bedroom, I was kind of shocked. You know, I was like, talk about this. You need this. You need to communicate when you're uncomfortable, because again, like you said, like more people, this is not just a romantic or asexual problem. So it's like, wow.
One of the funniest things that when since the book has been, people have been reading advanced copies and have like been responding to it. I've had people say to me, "Yeah, it's real. The book is really good." And you know, I think people who aren't ace could like use this too. It's like, yes, because because like a good relationship is a good relationship, and having good relationship skills are good relationship skills for everyone. Like none of these things are specific. We should all be doing things like asking for consent, setting good, appropriate boundaries, caring for ourselves, prioritizing our needs, and on like focusing on our, like we should all be doing those things regardless of where we get. And I just think it's very funny that people are surprised that like, oh wow, yeah, these things, I feel like I might use them too. Yeah, you really should. If you're not, you really should. So, Alicia, one of the things that I love about your account and the work that you do is I think you're just so insightful about looking at ace and ARO media representation, or just looking at media through an ace and ARO lens. And you're very insightful about it and always very thoughtful. And so I wanted to get you to sort of talk a little bit about media representations of ace and ARO relationships, and kind of like want to start like, so who's getting it right? Where do you see people getting it right?
Mostly it's the ones who don't treat it like an afterthought, where they're not treating it like it's a checkbox. So like someone gave a good refresher about like media that has confirmed asexuals inside it. And when they talked about it, it was like, oh, this person was introduced as this in season 3, season 6. And oh, this was just confirmed in a Twitter thing. And I was like, some of those people would not realize that. So you're making people go through probably years of media without knowing that this is how they're being represented. It's like that clear communication, which I know media literacy is it needs to be comprehended for that for some of these storylines, but it's not always there. And then when people like find out that like a certain character that does not fit these pre-done molds, like say for instance Todd Chavez, he's been out for a very long time, but that was only inside season 3. And then like they get someone like Alistair, who the creator has talked about being asexual for a very long time. When he's finally put to the screen, people are like, oh, he is asexual? What? And then they get that pushback because people have made this preconceived notion of how they think asexuals or aromantics are. So that's kind of why I choose to look at things the way that I do, because I'm like, we need to figure out and see more diverse stories. People don't even, like just today, I did a poll about which people are on the spectrum. And so I put around the sex averse, sex negative, sex favorable, sex positive. And while there was a lot of people sex averse, there is still some who fit at least 4 other boxes. And then look at the confirmed media that we have that are canon asexual characters. Most of them only fit 1 box. So that's why I try to do what I do.
When you look at like ace and ARO representations, what are some things that like really bug you? What, like when they get it wrong? When they get it wrong, what are the things that like most get under your skin about representations that don't quite get it right?
I want to say the ones that are like super shy. There's a certain personality that people like to show when they make asexual character. Say for instance, you see it kind of with Todd, with Elijah from Big Mouth, and now Isaac. They are highly educated. They're kind of studious, so they are kind of typecasting us a little bit because there's more to us. And I do love all 3 of those characters, but there isn't really more out there. And then when it comes to the women characters, it's kind of similar. Like Abby Sai, she actually is my favorite out of all of those. But again, you can kind of see that. You notice that throughout the boxes. You notice what they wear as well. So they also like have this certain like outfits that they have. They are very conservative with their looks, which someone like I actually wear similar stuff to that, but there should be more out there, you know? So then when a asexual character is showing a little bit of leg, like how people have headcanon Jessica Rabbit, you wouldn't get that pushback, you know? Because like, I want to see when I want to see that, I want to see more diverse type of storytelling when it comes to that. And then when it comes to like races, like you want to see culture mixed in with that, because we have all sorts of aces. Like I know you'll probably seen the Poly Aces and the Indian Ace Network. I loved working with them. They were supporters of me. You want to see how that interacts with that, because marriage, sex, and relationships all change throughout the board for that culture. Yep.
Yeah. So Sarah, is there anything that like particularly bothers you? Because we're gonna get you talking about creating ace and ARO relationships in fiction, but is it what bugs you? What gets under your skin?
For me, whenever I think about like ace media representation, I always think about Law and Order, because the entire premise of that show is based on if you didn't want it at that point, that's a crime, right? And I just think if everyone's favorite cop just pushed that just a little bit further, you're almost there, babe, you got it, and just said, if you want it never, that's also fine. Because I feel like that is such a powerful show in terms of like, it's one of the longest running shows. Like it's still going. It's one of the longest running shows. And again, it's like one of those very beloved characters. I think like that is a place of power if they did it correctly, of course. If they did like an asexual storyline, that would just be, I guess, a lot of people segue into understanding truly what being asexual is like, because the message of your show is if you did not want the sex at that current moment, that is a crime and you deserve justice. But where is that same energy for like, you know, those of us that want it never? And I just think it's kind of like you're being very performative here. Like if you're very gung-ho about like no, you deserve your justice if you didn't want it at that moment, and you cannot find it in you to say it's okay if you want it. Never. And again, there's a lot of like medical dramas and stuff like that. That sort of, I don't think they do this much anymore, but you know, there was a time where like if you were not having any sort of desire or anything, that was seen as like something to be medicalized, and that's obviously reflected in real life. So I think truly something like with a huge platform like that has the ability to help push the ACE agenda, for lack of a better word, in the right direction, because otherwise we get stuck with sort of these I would call them like the Sheldon Cooper types. Like he is seen as like this childlike robot with no emotions, can't form relationships. Like he's, you know, he's used for comedy, but for like a lot of people, I feel like it would be really just nice to be able to see that you're the internet's favorite detective would go to bat for you if you wanted sex never, you know.
The one thing that I would love to see, and it's very self-serving, is just older Ace people, Ace and ARO people. I'd love to see media representations that show that like Ace people look like this and are older, because I interact with so many people who have come to asexuality and aromanticism later in their lives, and it's there's some very interesting stories about those are interesting stories to tell, and I always think it's really important for there to be it's always important to have representations of experiences with people who are older, so that you sort of have a demonstration that a future is possible. You know, that young people who are kind of just arriving at asexuality can see like, oh, that's cool. They're look at all those old aces. We get to grow up, and that's going to be great. And I think every like queer and marginalized experience needs to see elders, because you need to know that a future is possible and that you can have a future. So I would love to see more older ace characters and visibility.
Yeah, like actually, so far I've seen probably one character that you would really enjoy like that. Like at the end of the Elijah induction episode inside season 6 of Big Mouth, his aunt comes in, and his aunt is asexual. And when I tell you, I wanted to be like that lady when I grow up. She's like, I have a very fulfilling life. As I have my friends, I have my family and my loved ones. I'm like, oh, that's me. That's me. And so you see, so I was like, oh my gosh, I see the strong Black woman, but she's on screen for like 6 minutes just to like explain and uplift Elijah, which I'm happy for that. That kind of helped inspire me to make one of my posts about like what advice older Aries would give to the younger community. But it was like, oh, I want to see more like that. We're getting there, but we need more.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Sarah, I love that. I love that you are not just living an ACE experience, but you are writing it into the world. You're creating, you're creating romance that's ACE focused. You're telling ACE relationship stories. I would love for you to talk a little bit about, like, what are the challenges of that for you? What is it like for you to create ACE characters into relationship stories?
Yeah, so when I was growing up and sort of having like didn't know it was my asexual awakening, but it definitely was kind of moments. There were no books, or at least they weren't like widely spread or talked about, like very niche groups talked about them. So I just really wanted to like, you know, it was kind of like put the book you want out in the world, like make a list of all the favorite things you love in books and put it together. But for me, writing, like, you know, my book's been out for a couple years now, so I've kind of got some years under my belt, and I just find that the hardest thing aside from writing the book is getting people to take a chance on it, because we live in a very like sex positive society, which I am very happy for. My minor was in women's gender and sexuality studies before anyone comes for me. But it's sort of like we've gone so far in one direction of sex positivity that if you are a person who is not like engaging in that kind of content, especially in the bookish space, if you're not engaging with spicy book talk, or you are openly like you don't like spicy books, there's this assumption that somehow that is a more like you are giving a moral commentary when it's you're stating your personal preference and you're not shaming anyone for it. But it all, like, you know, people come at you and say, oh, you're just trying to be puritanical, or, you know, you're just being a child. But for me, it's one of those things where like I've done a in-person book event before, and a person asked me if my book had any sex in it, and I said no, and they threw the book at me. So I quite literally had the book thrown at me. So that is the hardest thing. And then, you know, being on the internet, I'll see like people will be like, is it spicy on cross like every book you can imagine. I saw that for like books you definitely shouldn't be asking that about, first of all, especially like YA books, to the point where like I've been reading a lot of middle grade books because I know if there's romance in it, there's no space. And that's definitely like the hardest challenge for sure, is just getting people to take a chance on your book, because I promise the romance is just as fulfilling. You'll get just as much of a kick out of it as if it were spicy. Because my biggest pet peeve is when I read these spicy books and I'm like, would these characters still like each other if they didn't get a chance to like, you know, get their feelings out in that way? Because I guarantee you a lot of these book couples would not. And that's just definitely my biggest pet peeve, is having to sort of get like, you know, I already have a strike against me with like, you know, just the label of asexual, and now we've got the sex repulse in, and that reflects in my story. So that's, you know, multiple strikes against my stories already before anyone even gives it a chance. But for me, because of that, I definitely, when I write these stories, I make it a point that the aceness is not the problem ever. The aceness is never like, for me, I had a lot of internalized ace phobia like coming into my relationship. So I write about that a lot. A lot of my main characters have that internalized ace phobia where they push people away because they don't want that rejection. And that is something that I know very well because I struggled with it. But I always make it a point for the other character, the love interest, to be like, that's not even like on my radar for the issue. It's got to be, for me, either if it's internal or external, the conflict that prevents them from being together is not related to the asexuality at all. And I struggle writing allo characters because I don't know how to write an allo lens, so I just write the lens being through loving an ace person. But, you know, being an ace writer is hard because, again, with any sort of marginalized identities or representation, you're trying to do so much at once, you know? You're trying to paint that picture of aceness that feels authentic to you, but you don't want to alienate the other folks on the spectrum. And you want to show all these different kinds of love and relationships. But if you're in the romance genre like me, you've got to sort of, you know, make it clear why these two? Why do these two have to be the end game for the reader? And again, writing male-female romance, there's always this book isn't queer enough, because that I just happen to be writing what my relationship looks like. That's what I'm comfortable writing. I don't like feeling like I'm taking the spot away from same-sex ace writers. So I'm writing what I know, and unfortunately that just means a lot of erasure, even if both of my characters are queer. So that was a spiel. That was like lot.
That's exactly what I was hoping that you would share. I cannot believe someone threw a book at you.
Yeah, that's crazy. What?
What?
I looked around to see if anyone else had seen it, and they just walked away like they just hadn't done that. And I was like, after that, like whenever people are like, "Oh, it can't be that bad," I promise you.
Absolutely.
I promise you.
Where's the decorum? Oh my god!
And we were in this is like a public space. There are other people around, so I think it's just kind of like, I always think about that. And whenever someone's like, "Oh, ace people aren't, you know, discriminated against." Obviously that was an extreme example, but if you can imagine what all of our comic sections probably look like, that is, you know, not out of the realm of possibility. Especially, I don't like, again, if my book's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. You don't have to quite literally throw the book at me.
Yeah, I would not throw your book at you. I would ask you to sign it.
Yeah.
But I would not throw your book at you. So I wanted to sort of shift then from, you know, we've been talking about fictional and media representations. I wanted for us to just talk a little bit about our personal experiences with ace and ARO relationships, because I know that although my work is very personal and nonfiction, we are all like talking about and making what we're making because we live ace and ARO lives and are inside ace and ARO relationships because of the nature of who we are. And I wondered if we could like talk a little bit about what our own experiences have been with being ace and ARO and navigating relationships of all kinds. Not really like, doesn't have to be partnered ones, but what that experience is like. Alicia, would you want to start?
Yeah, totally. So I came out as asexual when I was 19. So that was back in 2015. So almost 10 years. And through there, I was able to communicate with certain partners how I was asexual and tried to like open relationships and stuff like that. Some of them were, of course, more receptive of that, and others weren't. I remember my experience when I did actually like, I'm actually sex favorable asexual. So like I am okay with doing stuff like that. I'm okay with acts like that, and I probably communicate that. But it was so interesting with one of my experiences with like a boyfriend that I actually did really care about. He thought that he had cured me. He was like, "No, you are totally, you're not ace. We're like this." And I'm like, first of all, I'm also like a demisexual as well. I did this because it's a communicated intimacy that I'm willing to give that does not erase who I am. And I've never seen someone like shut down so abruptly. And that was like pretty crazy. And then, of course, as I've been talking about, I'm also Southern. Y'all know those Southern values, the Ring by Spring girlies, the cotillions, where they really emphasize marriage and love like that. So when it comes to me, and I know that I want to share like my love with like my friends, and I would rather like fill like my life for like the love of my friends and family and not like just a partner. Some people can like think that I'm either being too what's the word, too open with like my relationships, and like they just want to be focused on just one. So getting into like learning how to communicate that I have love to share with everyone and love to give and not just like hold it in is something that I'm still working through, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Sarah?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, my partner is like a straight allosexual man. We've been together for like 6 years. And I would say that like sex, like the sex repulsing is just such a non-issue in our relationship. And I think it was like last year around this time, I think I did a post on my Instagram that did fairly well, and it was about like a lot of like basically the FAQs a lot of my readers had about relationships and dating while ace. And I asked my partner, I was like, so when I brought up like when we did the boundaries conversation, and I asked him what he was thinking at the time when I said that I didn't want to do anything like that. He looked at me and he's like, he registered the information, shrugged, and was like, don't really care, because to him there was so much more, to me and to us that was worth caring about to him. Like it's such a non-issue in our relationship that I think people are like shocked. Like they want to like invalidate it so much. They're like, oh no, he's lying. No, you just don't want to unpack your own. Like I feel like a lot of I've mentioned this in the past. A lot of allo people don't want to feel like the villain when they say when they break things off, or they make a bad decision because like their partner is not willing to do things with them. They always try to paint the ace person as, oh, you're depriving them, etc., when I promise you that man is fine. And again, it's one of those things that like I never had like a formal coming out. I'm pretty sure when I came out with my book, and hopefully none of my friends and family were reading that, they were like, oh, your main character is a self-insert, and I didn't intend her to be. But I was like, I guess for people that knew me back in the day, this was kind of like a subtle coming out, because being again in this space and having a platform now, I kind of have to come out. But it's also, again, asexuality is one of those things where like the not talking about it is kind of more like, I'm not talking to other people about their sex lives, so bringing up that I'm ace is not really like obviously coming out shouldn't be a big deal to anyone, but like, especially for ace folks, that's such a private thing that like you talk about with like your friends and stuff. But I'm not going to work and having a coming out party. It's definitely one of those things that a lot of people aren't talking about. But like I've had people I know personally ask me how I had that conversation, and being explicit and specific about every XYZ that I do and don't want to do, intimate or not, or just finding what works for you. And that's always, I hate giving all the disclaimers when people ask me for advice. I hate, you got to give the list of disclaimers, or otherwise it's going to be bean soup. and you just gotta, understand that what worked for me won't work for you, and this is a guideline. This is not like a how-to at the same time. But relationships work if the people in it are willing to do the work. There's not like oh, if this doesn't work out, I'll just move on to the next. No, you can put in the work if you want it. And again, the allos might think that they're being villainized, but why would you willingly, want to put yourself through a relationship that won't fulfill you, and you're going to be unhappy, and you're just trying to make that other person unhappy because you just want that kind of control. And again, I'm also from the South, and I think a lot of people in my life probably, they have these big nuclear families because they were kind of pigeonholed into that. When, they look back, they might love their friends and family, but would it be the life they had chosen for themselves? Maybe not. And again, sort of normalizing it, that, there can be mixed allo aspec relationships is a really big deal to me, because I think the allos are counting themselves out before they have a chance to play. I think y'all just want to not put in the work and not analyze things, when I promise you might actually surprise someone and surprise yourself with how unimportant some things are compared to others,
Yeah, that sort of like dives into kind of a thing that I reflect on in my relationships, because all of my partners are allo. I just a house full of allos. It's just me and all the allos. What I have been very impressed by, and what I've been really excited by, is that in our relationships, being in a relationship with me and us having the conversations that we need to have and the thinking through all the things we need to think through, it has helped my allo partners understand themselves better. My partner Scott has said that like being in a relationship with me has helped him like understand or think about his own relationship to his sexuality in a clearer way. And I think like I just feel like Ace and ARO people have a lot to teach everyone else. Being Ace and ARO is a challenge, but whenever we are allowed to kind of live our lives fully and completely and openly, we can teach other people a lot about how to relate to sex and how to relate to romance in ways that are outside of the norms, and that we can be good teachers just by kind of being ourselves.
And I always do make a point that like my best friend gets the Valentine's Day text first, not my partner that I live with. My best friend gets the boo basket. My partner gets nothing. Like because she was there for me before I had him. And again, my friendships are always something that like I try to give equal weight and priority to. And that's something that I do in my books a lot too, is I sort of try to normalize platonic touch a lot in my books, which again, some people might be like, hey, why are they doing those things that only couples do? And it's like, who are you to decide what kind of touch this is? Because again, I think touch, especially in the South, my very traditional mother is always like, anytime I had a boy within 10 feet of me, she was like, why is that your boyfriend? And I would just be like, I couldn't imagine if I like gave this man a hug or something, like when I was growing up, especially when I was a teenager. Oh my gosh. But like normalizing that you can hug your friends. And I feel like, femme people experience a little bit less of this depending on if it's like a different like gender couple, but like, female friends can usually, be more touchy-feely with each other, give each other hugs, and be more physically affectionate than like a male and a female friend group. And again, that was something I really tried to like debunk in my book. I was like, I'm definitely gonna have these two characters where there's not like a thrown in excuse for like why they're not together, like one's not like one's not gay or something. No, they could be attracted. No, they're going to be friends, and I am making that a point to show, because I hate that whole men and women can't just be friends thing, because there's no hierarchy here. Just, I don't like the qualifier just. And then also, again, you're sort of like pigeonholing people into like this role that, oh, if I'm very close with my female friend, I must, pursue her or something like that. When you can exist with your friends just fine. I promise that they will enrich your life in a very glorious way if you don't drive them away by being overly pushy about that kind of thing.
So we are kind of nearing the end of our club. We're gonna shift over to questions shortly, but I wanted to sort of give us an opportunity to leave folks with the one thing, if you could pick one thing you want people to know about Ace and ARO folks in relationships or Ace and ARO relationships, what's the thing, Alicia?
For me is communication and making sure that you are able to what's the word? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. You're able to communicate that, because we actually are able to have meaningful and fulfilling relationships that last a lifetime. Soulmates are more than one way. They're not linear.
Sarah?
Mine would be there's hope for whatever kind of relationship you want. If you are an ARO person that wants a queer platonic relationship, if you are an ACE person that wants a very specific kind of romantic relationship, there's going to be folks out there for you, and there's hope, and you don't have to hate yourself or pigeonhole yourself into a role or doing things that you don't want to do because you're afraid you're not going to find that, because I promise you, you will.
The one thing that I would say is the possibilities are infinite. You are not bound by the kinds of relationships that exist in the world. As Ace and ARO people, we can imagine relationships that fit us and help us thrive. The possibilities are endless. We can imagine anything that we want and ask for it and deserve it. We can do all that. So I'm going to just read a very short section of the book as like a last thing. And while I'm doing that, if you have questions for any of us, drop those questions in you see where the little question mark in the box is, drop them over there. And then I will head over there and start asking them, and like going through those questions. So this would be the time to add the questions. And then I'm going to just read the little part. So if you read I Am Ace, you know that I Am Ace ended with a list of I ended it with like a list of things that I wish for the reader. And I ended the Ace and ARO relationship guide the same way. So I want to just read a little bit of that very last section, which I think is, it makes me feel good every time I read it. So this is from the Ace and ARO relationship guide. At the center of all of these relationships is you. I hope you recognize the power in that. You and your ASPEC experience sit at the heart of a far-reaching web of human relationships that start with your heart and extend as far out into the world as you're willing to assert yourself. And you built that web of relationships. Not only does it speak to how much potential you have to reshape the world in a more ASPEC-affirming way, but it speaks to what a wonder it is to be ASPEC. What a wonder it is for you to be ASPEC. Look at what your singular ASPEC experience has the potential to create. Whenever you feel that being ASPEC is a limitation, think of all the ways you're making a mark on the world through the relationships you steward. Your ASPEC identity is a part of that stewardship, and it helps the world learn in small and large ways the value and meaning of our Ace and ARO lives. Take care, give care, and remember that being ASPEC is an expansion of possibility, not a limiting of it. As always, I'm glad you're here. That is the way the book ends. I spoiled the ending, ha ha ha. But I believe it. I really believe it. Like we are all proof. My two fabulous friends that I'm having a conversation with are proof. Like, you live your Ace and ARO life in front of other people, and you share your thoughts and your vibes and your feelings with the world, and you are helping people learn, and you're helping people grow, and you are opening up new possibilities for people. And your ASPEC lives are expansions of possibility, and I just think that's cool as hell. So, okay, you ready for some questions? All right. Oh yeah, well, we're going to start with this one. So Caitlin wants to know, how are we all this evening? How have you celebrated yourself for Ace Week? Anybody want to start on that one?
Oh man, I think I was trying to have like a good start. I wanted to do one review character tropes, and so that's been actually a lot of fun. So I've been headstrong kind of go in the A streak, making sure that I have a book to give, a character to give, and I am looking forward to having some art to give too. So this has been a good one.
Love it. Sarah?
I am currently in edits for book 2, and I've kind of been hitting that editing wall where it's like this is crap. I can't do this right now. But slowly understanding, like through seeing the build up to this event, slowly understanding that like, oh no, people are probably gonna need this story. Have I finished looking through the editing document? Yeah, absolutely not. But I'm going to. I kind of was like, maybe if I stay quiet about this, no one will ask me about it. But I realized I was doing myself and everyone a disservice, because I understand now that I have a platform, I've gotta use it for something. And even if it's just, to talk about grumpy ace girls and their love stories, that's something that I never thought I was going to be able to do again. Like when I wrote my first book and I published it, I was like, oh my gosh, never again. That was scary. And now I'm like, okay, we're back in the round for book 2, and I'm super excited to eventually share that with y'all. And also, I forgot to mention this in my little introduction earlier, but this doesn't mean anything's ebook is actually free on Amazon for today only. So that's how I'm trying to give back to this community that has given me this platform, is making this book accessible. And if anyone can't get it on Amazon, just send me a DM on Instagram. That's usually where I can see most of, because it gets, I'm not on Twitter still. I'm not on there anymore. But yeah, I just really want to make it more accessible to people, because at the end of the day, I'd rather someone who needs it reads it than just have it sit on a shelf somewhere.
And I mean, I planned this because I told them, please release the book during Ace Week. And so I celebrated myself. I celebrated Ace Week by publishing a book. Yeah. And last night was the official launch part, the launch event here in Washington. I'm in Washington, D.C. So we did the in-person launch event in Washington, D.C. And I had the most amazing conversation with a local ACE activist, and we had the coolest time. This is the best. And I'm going to Denver in a couple days for an event. Ace Week has been awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so here is one from Rebecca for dating. How do you deal with constant rejection, friend zoning, the instant you tell someone you are a sexiverse? How do you keep self-esteem and self-worth up? Sarah, do you want to take that one? I think you can speak to that one.
Yeah, so I'll be real with y'all. It was very hard for me in the beginning when I was getting into dating. And again, I dealt with the rejection so badly, I wrote a book about it. Like, it is hard, and I'm not going to discount anyone's, if you are feeling that, I just want you to know you've got to sort of internalize that it's not a reflection on you. If someone rejects you, that is, their actions are a reflection on them. And Cody, you talk about this a little bit in the Ace and ARO relationship guide, when in terms of boundaries, where we cannot control what other people do with the information that we give them. And I know that's kind of like that's not much of an answer, but it really is. You kind of have to. I'm this way too. I'm a people pleaser. Like, if for some reason I make everything my fault, even when it's something like traffic. But you kind of have to sort of grapple and understand that it's the other person problem and not a you problem, because it's not like there's no such thing as leading someone on or tricking them or anything like that. Like, if they have a problem with you, then you two are not a good match, and this is one of those non-negotiables that unless one of you is willing to bend that boundary a little, which again, this is something that probably shouldn't be, bendable boundary here. You've got to understand that it's on them, and it's not a reflection on you. It's not a rejection of you specifically. There's nothing wrong with you. And it's about them and what they were looking for, and what it doesn't match up. It doesn't mean that the puzzle piece doesn't go somewhere else. It just means that it's not the one that goes next to you, kind of. That's like the worst analogy. I swear I'm a writer. But yeah, you've got to understand that sometimes you can't help someone into loving you, because you've got to love yourself enough to recognize when being with that person would be more harmful to you. Like, you've got to respect yourself enough to fight for what you want and what you deserve, because I promise you don't need to be with someone who makes you feel that way.
Yeah, I want to add an important reframing. When someone rejects you, they are telling you that they are not the right person for you. They are not the right person to meet your needs and to be a good partner to you. So it's not something we internalize for ourselves, like, oh, I suck, I'm deficient. I'm no. A person who rejects you for being ace and sex averse is not the right partner for you. So you dodged a bullet. That's a good thing for you. You can go and find, now you can be free to find a person who is going to be the right partner for you. Alicia, do you want to add anything?
For rejection, when it comes to that, and especially if it comes because you're sex averse or asexual, I definitely will agree with you, especially Cody. When it comes to that, another door closes, another door will open. Especially because when we talk about our asexuality, I know a lot of us probably relate to that one phrase with like Isaac is like, oh, I'm just not in the mood to open up an encyclopedia for you. Some people, like, even like mentioning it, they will be the type of person who will like, I'm going to Google it, I'm going to talk to someone. You will be able to find that person who is willing to meet you there. So definitely not a wall. It is just a slight barrier. We're going to hop over it.
I love it. Positivity. I agree. I agree with all of you. All right. The next question. Oh, this is a good one. Do any of you have examples of ace ARO joy? I would like to contribute this conversation as a very good example of ace and ARO joy, because I am feeling a lot of it right now, sharing space with two amazing people. Ace and ARO joy, anybody?
I would probably relate to something that actually happened last night. It was one of my oldest friends' 30th birthday. And I had one of my besties come in. Like, I have bracelets of all my friends from like 10 years plus. We all managed to gather together. And it was such a loving event. And we've all had like our hardships. We all, that day where you're like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. I cannot wait to be with how some people are like, oh, that special someone. No, like when I gathered in with the love that I had, especially someone who's kind of going for like a really bad mesh session, like that, oh, that mesh is not going to work out. When I tell you, I felt so uplifted. Like that whole like quote, like, I feel love in this Applebee's tonight. That type of feeling happened last night. I was like, you know what? I don't need that mesh. I got, again, like I have my love right here. Like, oh my goodness. And this is a great time.
I love it.
I'm also loving my time here with these two amazing people who I have admired from, from afar for a while. I love feeling as if like I'm a part of something as great as like the ace community. There's so many amazing people and creators. I love feeling like I get to be colleagues with them. But also I love knowing when I have a reader reach out to me and say that my book made them feel seen or made them feel okay again, or just any number of responses that I get from readers, it helps me know that, there's one less person in the world that was feeling like I did back in the day. Like I just never wanted anyone else to go through that feeling, and knowing that I'm contributing to people being able to figure things out for themselves, being able to understand that they're not broken, and giving people hope again, that's really big to me, because I was taking a really big leap of faith when I published, and I've been scared every day of my life since. Just being an ace person on the internet's not fun. But just, anytime a reader tells me that I made them feel seen, or that my book gave them hope, or just any number of those things, it makes me, it's worth all of the trolls. It's worth everything to me, knowing that I'm helping someone.
Yes.
Are you willing to stick around a couple of minutes extra over the hour to just get the last couple in? Is that cool? Great. So let me answer this one really quickly. First of all, the beautiful ending. Thank you. That's nice. Preferred bookseller to buy the book in Canada. I always encourage people to use an independent bookstore. Any independent bookstore in Canada will be able to order the book and get it to you. If you are in Toronto, Glad Day Bookshop, I think is Glad Day Bookshop. A very cool queer-owned bookshop. But anywhere in Canada, you can use an independent bookseller. If not, bookshop.com, just because they also provide money for independent booksellers. I like supporting indies if you can. So, Flora, that would be where I would recommend. And like, I hope you like the book. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to Melanie's question. So this is Nicole's question. What's your favorite way to rep the Ace ARO Pride colors? I have purple Converse. That's my favorite.
I have a ton of yellow and blue outfits. I've probably seen a couple of videos where I have some flowers in my hair and my flags are in the background. And yeah, I just love the sunset flag is like one of my favorites. And I live on a beach, so it's something that I literally just wake up and look at that, Salutia.
Love it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm tall enough but for y'all to see this, but after the last event I did with Cody, my partner heard me say on the event that I wanted an Ace shirt, and he got me this little Ace shirt, and it's my favorite shirt in the world. But also my makeup, sometimes I wear black lipstick. I have purple eyeshadow on right now, and my glasses are like kind of there's gray at the bottom, there's black, and this actually has a purple stone in it. And also, y'all can't see my decrepit nails, but I've got like little ghosties in the Ace colors too. So that's how I love showing my Ace pride.
I love it. Okay. So here we have. Okay, I think we can get them all. Yeah. So let's do Melanie's question. How to deal with ace phobia? People who are in the medical field tell me I can't buy. Yeah. Okay. So Melanie, I have a sort of a good. If it's mental health professionals, I'll find a new mental health professional. If your therapist does not believe you, then you go find a new one, because that is not the right person for you. In terms of like medical doctors, that is a more challenging situation, because sometimes it can be very hard to find either a general practitioner or a specialist. One thing that you can do, if you have somebody in your life that is very ace supportive of you, bring in an advocate who can help you, like, back you up. It's totally fine to do. Other people use medical advocates all the time. If you have like a friend or a family member who can come with you into appointments when a medical practitioner is like denying your experience, you can have someone there to back you up. And like 2 against 1 is a powerful thing. And so like thinking about finding someone who can be a teammate and an advocate for you in the room, if you don't feel like you can do that, is a kind of a good way to deal with unaffirming medical professionals. Either of you have a?
Yeah, I will say that like this is one of those questions where like I've just basically dealt with like I haven't brought up, I was like, oh, this is a problem that I don't like. I haven't brought it up in that sense, but in the sense of like, when I go to certain doctors, I'm just like, hey, I don't plan on having children, and I don't do the things that people would assume you do to have the children. So like, can we just not talk about this? Like setting that kind of boundary. If you're assigned female at birth, that is a kind of boundary that you can set. Where if that is something that makes you uncomfortable, you can be like, hey, if this is not directly relevant to like any screenings that I have to do, we don't have to talk about it. I've had my fair share of like medical malpractice issues, so like I understand this is a bigger issue than what we can probably encompass in this event. But in general, just one of those things that's setting a hard boundary where unless you are screening for something in those areas, we don't have to discuss it. Like that is not a concern in my lifestyle right now, kind of. Like if my lifestyle is not being affected or anything, why is that being brought up by my healthcare professional?
Mm-hmm.
That's good advice. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Okay, this one's for you. This is for you, Alicia. Examples. Do you have any recent examples of disabled and or bi POC ACE rep in books?
See, my latest book that I've actually read, Looking for Love in All the Haunted Places by Claire Kahn. The main character, Lucky, she has to deal with a certain type of affliction that affects her eyes and basically her mental health in ways that people don't seem to navigate. And it's mainly in a social sense and in terms of relationships. So it does affect that. It has limitations that she has to struggle with. And let's see, what's another book? Mainly the last one for movie that I recently watched. Oh yes. So yeah, those main two that Sarah's holding up would be the main ones. But as terms for movies that I have seen, I would say this one. Yes, Toma from Daybreak. He wears glasses and he has been confirmed as a romantic. There was Navier inside of the remarried Empress that had been headcanoning. She had deals with infertility, and so those are not common things that have been talked about. So I definitely would recommend those. So yes, happy disabled Ace Day for that too, which has been amazing.
Yeah, and be just like a shout out to being Ace. I wrote the introduction for that, and the stories are terrific. There's so many good stories. I think we're getting a paperback really soon. So if you haven't gotten the uh, uh, the hardcover and you want to wait for the paperback, I think is coming out pretty soon. And it does have a lot of like really good diverse rep. I guess I answered that. Okay. Do you
I
want
was
to?
gonna say Love Letters for Joy by Melissa C has a disabled, clearly a spec character. Also, just to put another option out there.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, so we have two left. If we'll keep these brief, and then we'll be able to wrap up. What advice would you give teen ARO aces? I'd like to give this one a go first. Be very confident in your understanding of yourself, even as a teenager, even as a young person, but also be open to that understanding changing. You're still at the beginning of a journey, and you're gonna like think through a lot of things, and how you understand yourself right now as a teenager may change. Allow that to be okay, but stand confidently in how you understand yourself right now. Adults are going to tell you that you can't possibly know your ARO or ace as a teenager, because what do teenagers know? Teenagers know a lot. And you know better than anybody else what is happening in your body and your heart and your mind. So stand firm in that you are the authority of your own experience. It may change, because we all change. I've changed a ton, even as an old grizzled mall Santa myself. We all change. But like, you're the authority of your own experience. You guys?
I would like to say that it's okay and you're not behind if you're like you probably will be feeling some type of FOMO, like fear of missing out. And it's okay if like you're okay with missing out. It's okay if that FOMO disappears and you realize, hey, I actually don't want to be what like some other people are doing. That's good for them. That's not for me. And it's sort of okay if you like go for a while feeling as if you're behind, as long as you understand that you're not actually behind. Because I know sometimes we as especially as ace creators, we probably feel a little bit of shame within ourselves, but it's, you know, understanding that that shame doesn't define you and you're not a bad person and you're not a fake, you know, activist for feeling some sort of internalized way about, oh, should I feel bad about, do am I a bad person because I feel bad that I'm not, that I don't feel bad about missing out, like all these double negatives. I apologize, but you know, just understanding that like if you have FOMO, it's okay. If you realize you don't actually care what other people are doing and you just want to do your own thing, that's okay. If you feel like you're behind and you feel bad that you think you're falling behind because you don't want to, you know, you don't want to put any value on like a timeline, so to speak, everything's okay. You're going to find your path, you're going to find what you want, and that's all that matters. And, you know, what anyone thinks or like judges you for, what society at large tells you, that that's just not for you. And we were never here to create a mold here. We were here to create tools to help people.
Alicia?
Yes, so that like when you feel like you're falling behind, like that late bloomer type of thing, like standing your ground, especially because those societal pressures, those peer pressures, where like I know probably a lot of us heard that phrase like, oh, you don't got no little boyfriend yet, or oh, who you gonna ask to prom, or people like that. Never let your confidence falter. You know yourself. Like, you know that, oh, well, I actually would like to hang out with my friends for like prom or like situations like that. Or like, you know that I'm like more focused on me, because those are like a really formative years. So it's okay to seem like a late bloomer, because you're still going to bloom. You may not bloom at the same time. You're going to be either a moonflower or you're going to be a lily of the valley. You're going to be who you are. So as long as you enjoy it, you are going to be okay.
You're still gonna bloom. That's gonna be the thing. That's the thing I'm taking with me. I'm taking with me because that's true for everybody. That's true for every single person. Last question. This is from Karina. Let's give like some 3 quick pieces of advice. Karina wants, do you have any advice on how to feel less left out when everyone is dating and doing other things?
I Would you mind me like going first?
Yeah, go.
Yes, because actually almost all my friends have actually recently gotten married, and I was a bridesmaid to 4 different weddings. And you would think that I would be like, oh, always a bridesmaid, never the bride type of syndrome. But if your friends communicate and know who you are, they will be able to invite you in. Like, they're like, my friends had like an escort for me, or I had like my plus one of my besties. So when it comes to that, you will have someone for you for that. Like, you, as long as you have like that support system and maintaining that, because that's one of those relationships where you actually communicate for that, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah,
Sarah?
mine is similar, having a support system. Like when I was in college, I didn't have like a date anywhere really. Like I did everything with my 2 best friends, and that was how I got through college. Was I was like, if if nothing else, we're gonna eat every single meal together, and I forced her to be my best friend, and we are. I texted her today. We are still best friends to this day. So just take like allowing yourself to do like those date type things. So like, hey, you want to go to this event together? Allowing yourself to do those things with your friends and under getting that understanding of what it's like to form that deep bond without like the pressure of feeling like, oh, I've got to make this romantic. Understanding who you are in that in those sort of spaces and cultivating those relationships with your friends first can really help you along later.
Yes, and self dates. Yes, I was actually about to add that. Justin just put us at the chat. Self dates are so amazing. I remember my first art festival that I did. I took myself out for a self date because I was so proud of myself. And I was able to celebrate that even though I didn't have anyone else with me. Celebrating yourself, even by yourself, is so important.
That was exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, like treat yourself the way you would want somebody to maybe treat you, or like you deserve the movie, you deserve the nice dinner at the restaurant, you deserve the fun adventure, even if you're by yourself. And like treat yourself and become like your best. You have to become a really good partner to yourself first, or just you have to become generally a really good partner to yourself. So treat yourself. Treat yourself. Treat yourself. Do that. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes some of my favorite experiences these days, even though I have multiple partners, is when I get to go do something by myself. Um, so those are all of our questions. I want to just remind everybody of a couple things. First, the video for this will archive immediately at this link. So if you want to rewatch parts later, you can come back to it. If you want to share this with somebody who missed out, you can send it and they can watch it here later. This same link will take you back to the full archive of the video. After this event, probably tomorrow, I will send an email to everyone who registered with links to Sarah and Alicia's work and ways to financially support them. Also, Little Gay Bookstore, how to order book plated copies of my book and support them. All of those links will get sent to you, so you'll be able to connect with these 2 incredibly fine people. Now, the mushy part from me to you, my friends, because when I end the thing, we're all going to disappear, just be in our houses. So it I have been very happy that the book is coming out because the book is cool and everything, but I most appreciate that the book gives me opportunities to spend time and conversation time with incredible people like the 2 of you. I am such a big fan of both of you and what you do, who you are, and the way that you are impacting positively our communities. Thank you from like the bottom of my big ace heart for your work, for who you are, and for hanging out with me tonight, because it means the world to me. I think you're both absolutely incredible.
So you're always trying to make me cry. You've always made me cry almost like 3 times this whole week.
I love y'all. I love y'all so
Yes.
much.
No, thank
Um,
you for creating such a platform. Like Ace Dad Advice, it's been such amazing, and finding this community um is such an amazing way for us all to grow together as we continue to make more representation for ourselves in the media, in music, in movies, and books. So thank you to everyone. We are
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. This is the best part of my year, probably. This is amazing.
and I'm gonna, because I'm originally from the South, we're gonna have to do a Southern meetup, and
yeah.
like I will make a gumbo.
Yes.
I'm gonna make it go because I'm very good at it. Again, I'm so appreciative to you both. I am appreciative to everybody who showed up tonight to hang out with us. Thank you for being active in the chat. Thank you for everything. You both will hear from me shortly on other matters, and I'll be sending you a copy of this. So that's going to be coming your way probably this weekend. Again, my thanks to you, and continue doing the amazing work that you do. You make our community so much better by being in it. All right. Have a great evening, everybody. Goodbye, everyone. Bye, friends.